So 2026, hip hop is known for booty shaking, it's known for trapping at the bando, it's known for circling the block on the op, it's known for debauchery that's really cleverly charaded in hi-hats and 808s. But what if I told you that hip hop, in all of its hedonistic fulfillment, shrouded in melodies and percussion, that is actually far more impactful than you realize?
Boxing my pain away, boxing my dreams, boxing my hopes away, boxing my shame.
All right, so quick story. I was a former academic advisor at James Madison University for the football team. If you know anything about JMU, they're recently in the college football playoffs for the first time in history when they played University of Oregon. So that's the same JMU that I used to work at. One of my former student athletes, his name is Alden, and he was really talented, played running back, but he got to a point in his career where he just wasn't fitting in. Like, his coaches were trying to push my man out of the door and just replace him, for lack of better words. He kind of didn't help himself just by how he carried himself and his body language. But anyway, my job was simple: to help Alden and the rest of my student athletes to stay academically eligible, to help them figure out what they want to do with their degree, and just to help them to be successful in and outside the classroom. So as he hit this wall in his football career, there really wasn't a lot of folks that he could go to and talk to, at least authority figures, I should say. And so he got to a point where he wanted to quit football and school altogether. As he's sharing his frustrations with me, he's also sharing that he wants to quit football in college and start a music career. And I leaned in. I was actually curious because I didn't know that, he was an artist. He confided in me. So I was very curious about his interest in music and actually like the work that he was creating, and he shared his music. So as I leaned in, we started talking about all kinds of stuff, from digital audio workstations, different artists that he was interested in, to music that he was creating. And I shared my own music, right? Despite me not looking like an artist, being a 30-year-old academic advisor, we just built this bond on hip hop. That became the language of our relationship. And so the outcome, fast forward, Alden didn't end his football career the way that he wanted to, but what he did do was graduate his college degree, walked away with a bachelor's degree. And essentially after he finished his degree, he had a short stint as an artist. But even more important, my man transitioned into the professional world, and he's making really good money. He's doing recruitment, he's financially stable, he's independent, and for all lack of better words, he's successful. So the point that I'm really making is, being a support figure in his life, hip-hop was the vehicle. Hip-hop was the medium that we could sort of bond. Hip-hop became the medium for me to motivate him, to have some honest conversations, to talk about ownership, responsibility, critical thinking. And so without us even knowing, hip-hop became the educational tool for transformation in both of our lives. So this got me thinking, when we think about hip-hop, apart from the mainstream, hip-hop has served as a really dope vehicle for mentorship. So I wasn't trying to be a mentor to Alden, but naturally, as a professional and authority figure, I kind of serve as a mentor for some folks that choose to be mentored. But in hip hop, the same is the case for many other successful individuals. When you think about Sean Carter, Jay-Z, we think about him being a mogul. But without somebody called Jaz-O, there's probably not a Jay-Z. Jaz-O taught Jay-Z how to structure songs. He taught him how to be disciplined in the studio. He taught him essentially how the industry really works. And then you fast forward years later, we have Jay-Z as a successful artist. Other good examples is Nas. So when we think about Nas being sort of one of the patriarchs of dope hip hop music, we wouldn't have an Illmatic as one of the best projects ever, or having one of the dopest MCs ever by way of Nas, without a Large Professor. So Large Professor gave Nas access to studios. Could you imagine growing up in inner city New York, not having necessarily the equipment, resources to record? That's what Large Professor was to Nas, giving him access to not just studio time, but also other producers to help him to procure beats and produce his music. Another good example is Tupac. There's no Tupac without Digital Underground. Tupac was a roadie. He carried their equipment. He was a hype man. He was a backup dancer. Digital Underground allowed him to tour and learn the ins and outs of the music industry before Tupac was an independent solo artist. Another great example, a fellow 757 native of Virginia, is Pharrell Williams. Without somebody like Teddy Riley, who is one of the architects of the New Jack sound in the late 80s, early 90s, we wouldn't have a Pharrell Williams without Teddy Riley, essentially teaching Pharrell how to design sound, to think about blending various genres, to think about production workflows and some of the technical aspects. And then lastly, one of my favorites, I love Christian hip hop. Without a Lecrae, we probably won't have an Andy Mineo, at least not on the sort of mainstream or independent success that Andy Mineo has had by way of having relationships with a mentor like Lecrae. So Andy Mineo is very talented. He's kind of an out of the box type of thinker, dope lyricist, hungry, raw. But honestly, Lecrae helped Andy by modeling discipline, to think about long-term success independently as an artist, how to build a brand and artistry without chasing trends. So I just give these artists as an example of the power of hip hop by way of mentorship. All right, so let's break this down. There's 3 points that I want to emphasize when it comes to the power of hip hop as an educational tool. The first point is hip hop creates engagement. So there's about 2.1 million high school dropouts that happen every year. When we look at ages 16 to 24 years old, this is the primary demographic for hip hop listeners or the hip hop culture or hip hop genre. So when we look at Black and brown youth between the ages of 16 to 24 years old, there's about a 5.3% increase in likelihood to drop out of high school. Now, I'm not trying to coach high school or college degree or certifications, but I do think the power of education is the force multiplier for success and just being able to make money and be independent. So just think about that. Hip hop can be a big tool just to keep people engaged so that they can get the education, stay engaged in school, and ultimately make their money and be independent. The second point that I want to make is that hip hop builds identity and trust. I told you about my story as an academic advisor, working with Alden and working with the guys at JMU. When you realize that most of educational systems or organizations that serve Black and brown young people or underserved communities or other groups that are peoples of colors, you got to realize that there's a relationship component to this. Most of the folks that come from Black and brown communities, it's hard to trust authority figures that are white. And I'm not saying that it's impossible to do, but imagine if for ourselves as professionals, authority figures, that we're mindful of the culture that our young folks come from, we can be intentional with building relationship. It helps us to be vulnerable, to have honest dialogue. So it's normal to have our institutions and our businesses and organizations to primarily be led by white people. But if you're trying to engage Black and brown communities, peoples of colors, all of us, white people included, gotta realize that we gotta meet people where they are. We gotta be sensitive of the culture. And so using hip hop as a tool to build trust could be effective. The third point that I wanna make is that hip hop trains transferable skills. So I'm a career coach by trade. I design large scale programs. I'm a coach manager that serves other coaches that ultimately help people to be educated, gain the skills to transition to the workforce. So I'm big on career readiness and career development. I have 2 college degrees. I got a bachelor's degree, got a master's degree. However, with all of that education, hip hop has been the biggest tool that's kind of spurred my curiosity. I've read more books based off of what I've heard the thought leaders that I follow or rappers that I follow, more than I have with any college course or degree that I pursued. I've read both of Gucci Mane's book. I love his books because he talks about the intersection of his public persona and mental health. Will Smith, his book was super dope. I love hearing about his story coming from Philadelphia to like the challenges he's had in Hollywood. KB, as a Christian rapper, thought leader, he has a book, Dangerous Jesus. I love the intersection of faith as well as the tension when it comes to following Jesus in a political landscape. 50 Cent, I enjoy reading his books, talking about not just the music side, but leading G-Unit and folks that might not have been motivated to follow his lead. And so there's so many different rappers that have served as thought leaders that have spurred my curiosity. And so what do we use our rappers as thought leaders to help train transferable skills, to help our young people to develop a curiosity, critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, or just overall motivation to be entrepreneurs, to be creatives, to be self-sufficient. So what I'm not saying is that we just need to go out and follow rappers. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying that we can take an intentional look at how we use hip hop as a medium to train transferable skills to have long-term success for young people and OGs for that matter, right? What I am saying is that there's an obvious box that we need to take a closer look at. I think there's things that we need to unbox from our perceptions of hip hop, and I think there's things that we need to stow away when it comes to how we use hip hop. Let's stow away debauchery, let's stow away foolishness, but let's perhaps pull out an opportunity to engage underserved communities or to have honest, crucial conversations as leaders and engage young people in a way that's constructive and productive. Hopefully this makes sense, man. Y'all be blessed.
Boxing my pain away, boxing my dreams, boxing my hopes away, boxing my shame. Boxes on boxes, I'm stacking my grief, boxing these haters that slander my name.